Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to achieve the Lomo effect in Adobe Photoshop to help you transform your images. The first thing that you need to do is go ahead and open up an image in Adobe Photoshop. I've chosen this image of the wheelbarrows here because there's some already pretty good contrast in color and in shading and that sort of thing in the image, and we're just going to enhance those a little bit later. So that's the reason I chose this, but the technique really works well on most images, so that's good, and it's a good technique to know because of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just get started, like I said, and open up your image in Adobe Photoshop, take your background layer, and go ahead and make a copy of that so we have a non-destructive kind of working copy of this this technique. What I mean by that is we can always go back to our background layer, delete layers if we need to, and kind of start over without damaging the original image. So what I did is I took that background layer and I drug it down into the new layer button to make that copy. You could have also, with that layer selected, pressed Ctrl J on your keyboard to make a copy. If the layers palette's not showing for some reason, go up to Window, down to Layers, and click on it, and that should make it pop up. Okay, and then you make your background layer. First thing that I want to do is with my new background copy selected is click on the New Layer button and go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and fill that layer with white, a white color. So one way that you can do this is using the paint bucket tool, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to make white your foreground color. So since I have black and white, the default color is set, I need to click this arrow to put white up on my foreground color. If for some reason you don't have the default colors down here, you have like blue and green or something, go ahead and click on this default foreground background colors button, and that'll set you back to your default colors, and then you can toggle white to the front. Okay. Then go ahead and select your paint bucket tool over in your tool palette. If the gradient tool is up on the top, you just click and hold on that and then select your paint bucket. But go ahead and make that layer white. Okay, the next thing that you want to do is set the blending mode to multiply so that you pretty much can't even see that layer, because the real reason we even made this layer is to put some layer styles onto it. So what we need to do is double click on that layer to bring up the layer styles and click on inner shadow, because that's what we want. Okay. Go ahead and you can leave the blend mode to multiply because your layer is already set to multiply, so it's not really going to change a lot if you change that thing, but certainly feel free to play around with it. But take your opacity up to 100% and take the distance down to 0, because your distance is going to offset that effect by whatever angle you have set here. We want it even all the way around, so we're going to take that down to 0. We're going to make our size up to 250 pixels, which is the maximum amount you can do, and then we're going to click OK. And that just applies this sort of effect to your image, and we're done with that sort of effect right now. So I'll go ahead and click on this this arrow over here to kind of hide those styles, because we don't really need them there and they'll just kind of get in the way. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to kind of intensify that effect a little bit, that kind of darkened outer edge. So what we need to do is go ahead and select our background copy, and we're going to select our lasso tool. If your lasso tool, your standard lasso tool, is not on top, once again just go ahead and click and hold, and it'll bring up a couple different options for you there, and click on that just standard lasso tool, because we're just going to make a very basic lasso around the main object that you're using here, mine being the wheelbarrows. So I'm going to go ahead and make that selection, and I've done that. Then I'm going to go up to the top to select and select the inverse. So select down to inverse and click on that. And then the next thing I want to do is go back up to select, down to modify, and down to feather. And I want to add an 80 pixel feather to that. And click OK. And that'll just make it so when we do this next step, there's no hard edges. This next step is we want to add a levels adjustment layer. So we go down to our adjustment layer button here in the middle, and we click on it and click on levels. Okay, and we want to take that middle slider that from our adjustment layer that popped up, and we want to slide that over until it says 0.50, and that's just once again kind of darkening up around the edges there because we made that selection. You have this layer mask here. If you want to add some areas to that, you can go ahead and click on that layer mask, select your brush, make sure that it's set, the hardness is set to 0, so you can go up to the top, click the drop down arrow here, set the hardness to 0, and make the size pretty big, maybe something like that, and you can kind of click around a little bit and darken up some areas if you want to. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do with those adjustment layers. The next thing that we want to do is add another adjustment layer actually, and it's going to be we'll go ahead and do the curves adjustment layer now. Okay, so what we want to do is create an S curve. So we'll click once in the middle, once at the top, and once at the bottom, and we'll drag that top slider up and to the right. The middle one's going to stay right where it was, and the bottom one will go down and to the left. Okay, and what that does is, obviously, as you can see, it just intensifies the highlights and the lowlights in your image. Okay, and we want them pretty strong for this effect. The next thing that we want to go ahead and do is make another adjustment layer. So we'll click on that adjustment layer, and we'll do hue and saturation. And what I like to do always is just bump up my saturation in these. So I'll maybe bump it up 20% or 20, plus 20 or so. And that's just going to make our colors more vibrant. You can leave that step out if you don't like the way that it looks. Okay. The next thing to remember is that these adjustment layers that we've made, they're applying to everything below them. So we have this layer 1 above all that stuff right now, and we did that because of when we made our selection. We wanted to make it on the wheelbarrow layer. But at this point we can go ahead and drag that down below all these so that it's applied to that effect on the outside as well. And you can see what that did. It just applied the curves and our levels to that layer as well. Okay? So the next thing that we want to go ahead and do, and actually if you don't like that, you can put it above any one of those layers. I think I want to put it above the levels layer actually, because it got a little too harsh. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do though is select our topmost layer, and we want to make a new layer. And we can rename that layer hue, because that's what we're going to do to it. I always like to rename my layers when I'm making layers, just so I know what it's doing. Okay, so we're going to call that one hue. And we're going to put black back on the top, and once again you can toggle that back and forth with these this toggle arrow thing here. Okay, so we have black on the top, and we're going to select our paint bucket tool, and we're going to go ahead and just paint in that entire layer black. And then we're going to go to our blending modes and set it to hue. You can see what that kind of did. It kind of removed all the color from our image. It made it black and white. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to take the opacity down, and you can kind of play with this. I want to take it down to 40 at first, and you see that one seems a little bit too washed out a little bit still for me, so I want to go down, because I added that saturation layer to make my colors pop. I want to bring some of those colors through a little bit more, so I'm going to go down to 20, I think, and I'll go ahead and leave it right there. That's pretty good. That's what I want, but that's completely up to you. It's a preference thing, okay? So, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to kind of sharpen up this layer a little bit, and what we need to do that is we need to go all the way back down to the bottom, and at this point you can go ahead and make your background layer visible again, but we're still not going to touch it. I'm just doing that so that after we sharpen up this layer and add our blending modes to it, that you can see this original background layer through it. But like I said, it's still non-destructive. We're not going to do anything to that actual layer. So go ahead and click on the background copy right above the background layer, and what we want to do is go up to Filter, down to Other, and to High Pass. I'm going to add a high pass with a radius of 50 pixels here. You should be able to use the same one if you want, but go ahead and play around with that number. The more, I think, the pixels or radius that you add, kind of the more of this sharpening and smoothing effect you're going to get on your image, okay? But like always, too much is probably a bad thing. So maybe go ahead and stick with what I'm doing here at first, which is 50, and then click OK. And then what you want to do is go up to Filter, down to Blur, and down to Gaussian Blur. And what you want to do with the Gaussian Blur is go ahead and add about 1/3 of whatever number you did for the high pass there, okay? So I'm going to do about 16 pixels, and then click OK. At this point, I'm going to go up to the top to Image, and then go to Adjustments, and click on Invert, or you can press Control-I on your keyboard to do the same thing. And you can see that that inverted the effect that we made with the high pass and with the blur. And what we want to do is with that layer still selected, go up to our blending modes and put an overlay on it. And that kind of smoothed and sharpened up our image a little bit, and I can show you exactly what it did by just toggling it on and off. So that's with without that effect on it, and that's with the effect on it. So if you like it one way or the other, I mean, you can either add it or leave it off. I think it adds a lot to this this technique. And at this point, we're pretty much done. We've added our Lomo effect to the image, and And it's a non-destructive kind of technique because you can go through and change any of the settings on here. Say you wanted to see what it looked like at that 40% hue, you can do that and it'll look like that. Or you could delete or make invisible any of these adjustment layers that we have. So it's completely non-destructive and you've added your Lomo effect to the image. Okay? So I guess the last thing that I'll do is I'll just show you where we started. And I'll go up to my history to do this. And I'll just click on the original image, that's what we started with, and then I'll click on the last change I made down in the history to show you that that's what we ended with. So it's a pretty cool effect, and I hope you liked this tutorial. I hope you learned from it. If you did, please click the like button on YouTube. Please like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, and thanks for watching.